Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jami Albright. And this week on the show we have
Emilia Rose.
Yes, we do.
That's right. So I talked to Emilia about subscriptions, and it was great. She had so much information, and I asked her, like, if you're just starting out, how to get started, and if you're like more advanced, her ideas for like kind of going to the next level with subscriptions. Mostly about Patreon was what we focused on. But it was really interesting, and she's doing great with that. And I think it'll be. And then she uses it really to connect with her readers. Yeah. And it's just totally different way of doing a writing career than we've talked about before, I think. So very interesting.
Yeah, that's great. So Sara did the interview by herself because I was not available. But the good news is we brought my sister home from the hospital this week, Friday, and that was awesome. Things are good. We're just keep praying that this chemo works even more. They're saying that all indications are that it's working. And so things are good. But I did want to just say to our listeners and to Sara, thank you guys for being understanding, and we're going to get back on track. I promise. I just have been kind of not available. So, but anyway, that's all that's going on with me really right now.
Yeah. And that's totally fine. And I know everyone understands. I mean, we all have things come up, and
right.
This is just one of those things that you just have to roll with it and get through it and take one day at a time. So that's what we're doing, because we love the podcast and we don't want to stop.
No.
So we're just going to keep going. And it may be kind of, I don't know, not hit or miss. I don't know what we'd call it, but we're just we're barely keeping our heads above the water, but we're doing it.
The seat of our pants. Yeah.
We're doggy paddling.
I will tell you a funny story though, just because, it's just our family. So we were leaving getting ready to leave on Friday, and a nursing tech that had been helping, it was really one of Joni's favorite. He, strong, and could really move her around and stuff. And he was helping her. And she said, Devontae, will you come home with me? My husband won't mind. And my other sister said, they have the neatest relationship. They just each do their own thing. And Joni and I at the same time said, they don't have an open relationship.
No, that's not quite what we meant.
Yeah, exactly. It was so funny because his eyes got real big. And,
he wasn't quite sure how to take it properly.
Exactly. So anyway, but it was a good day. It was a good day. So anyway, what's been going on with you?
Well, we are wrapping up our time in the mountains, and I'm a little sad because it's been so nice, but I'm ready to get home too.
Yeah.
So we're wrapping that up, and then the only other book news I have is I'm trying out Bookvault. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's like Ingram Spark. You can do print on demand. And I decided to print a test copy. I'd heard Joanna Penn talking about it. It's Bookvault.app, app. And the cost, I was like, let me go in and see how much it costs, because one copy of my book from Ingram Spark with the tracked shipping is extremely expensive, like $30 to $35. And Bookvault is much cheaper. They're only in the UK, but they ship to the US, and even converting pounds to dollars, it was still cheaper for one copy. Oh, wow. So I'm printing a test copy and having it sent, and I did it expedited because I kind of need to see, I want to see it before the Kickstarter goes live.
Right.
But it went really fast, and the book may actually beat me home.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I paid for expedited shipping as well. Expedited, like printing and shipping, just so I could get it.
Yeah.
But, and the interesting thing about them is you can do color pages. You don't have to, like most places you can only do either black and white or all color. And you can do like one color page or 10 color pages or whatever. So I'm trying one color page for the title page just to see how that looks. So I'm excited to see it. And yeah, you might want to check that out if you're looking for alternatives. And the thing with, I guess what started all this is like Lulu, a lot of authors are using Lulu Express to print and ship, like if they're selling through their Shopify store. But Lulu Express does not do the 5x8 size. But this Bookvault.app does. They do have 5x8. So a lot of people are trying them out. And I guess if enough people keep using them, then they're apparently looking for printing options in the US, which would make it even faster. So that's my big news. I'll let y'all know how it turns out, but I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I am too. So let us know. Yeah. Well, we should probably get on with the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I'm interested to hear what she has to say.
Yeah. So here is Emilia. Okay. Today on the Wish I Knew Them podcast, we have Emilia Rose. Hi, Emilia. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm glad to be here.
You're great. We're so excited to talk to you. And we have so many questions. So let me read your bio and we'll get started. With over 31 million online store reviews, Emilia Rose is a USA Today bestselling author of steamy romance. She loves writing about dirty talking bad boys and alpha holes. She currently lives in a small town in Connecticut, USA, with her husband, 3 cats, and cute yellow ducklings. So that is a great bio.
Oh, thank you.
Well, so tell us, how did you get into writing?
Yeah. So when I was younger, it started off with me just reading a lot. When I was younger, I remember I had my mom just read like stacks and stacks of books to me every single night. And from there, I would just like progressed and just continued to read a lot. And I got into like romance in my teenage years. And I was reading a lot on an online platform called Wattpad. And it has a bunch of werewolf romances, which is how I got into writing. I started writing a werewolf romance, and then I paused for a little bit when I was in college, and then I had to pick it back up because I had too many characters like roaming around in my head and they wanted stories to be told. So I started writing again in college just to kind of like relax a little bit.
Yeah, that is great. And it's interesting, like most authors that we've had on there, they grew up reading, but very few people have mentioned Wattpad. And I think that's something that's drawn like the younger generation into reading, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too. There's tons of younger readers on Wattpad, but there's also like, I found there's readers of all ages on Wattpad, but there are a lot of YA novels and young adult novels there too, which brings in the younger crowd.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Well, we like to ask everyone, what is your definition of success? Because there's so many different ways you can define success. So what is it for you?
Yeah. So my definition of success really comes down to connecting with my readers. When I started, I wasn't even like doing it for the money. I tried hard not to do it for the money. And and so my whole goal was to just connect with my readers and like bring out emotions in them through storytelling. And Wattpad has this has inline commenting within their stories, so people can comment directly or as they're reading, and it's really it makes me really happy. And when I see comments come in through different readers when they are reading certain paragraphs and certain ideas that I'm talking about in my stories, and just seeing their reactions is really, I define that as, that's like my success, is to be able to have readers actively react throughout the story and I get to see it. I just think that's like a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So it's like real-time feedback almost, right? Yeah. That is interesting because most of us, we write the whole book and then we release it. So yeah, that's interesting. And does it affect your writing? Like if people really love a certain scene or a certain character, do you change your storylines? Do you modify things?
I sometimes I do modify things. A lot of times people will comment things they want to happen. But sometimes readers who don't know what they actually want to happen.
Yes.
So you have to take each comment with a grain of salt. You're like, oh, should this happen? Like, I don't know. And so sometimes I will take their comments and use them to make the story a lot better. And I usually do that the most after the book is finished, when I'm going back and like revising before I publish it on any wide retailer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do sometimes use their feedback throughout the story.
That's interesting.
As I'm writing it.
Yeah. And I think you're right that it's like readers and TV viewers, like you want certain things to happen, but then at the same time, do you really want the characters to get together? Do you really want them to solve the mystery like right away? If there's an overarching mystery throughout the series, do you want it solved in book 2? Maybe not. Maybe you want it to keep going. So it's true. You have to kind of step back and not let them totally control the whole thing.
I know so many things would just be like, books would be over so quickly if like readers had it their way. And sometimes you need that kind of like build up.
Yeah, true. Well, what do you wish you had known about writing or craft?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I spent some time thinking about it. One thing I wish I had known when I was starting to write, and this is just before I started publishing altogether, is your story isn't for everyone. And you don't have to make your story for everyone. When I was in college, I had this like really, really, I don't even know what to call her. She was a writing professor and she would always mark up my stories and she like would not let me write romance at all. And I was like, no, I want to do all this stuff. And I would always compare my craft and my writing to a few other people in that class. And they had like, their writing was filled with so much description and so much like setting, and that's not how I write and that's not how I like to read. So I had to really just like step back and be like, I could do this my own way. There's not one set way to write and there's not one set way to read. Readers will read my stuff if they like it. If they don't, they won't.
Right.
So that's something I had to learn.
Yes. And that's a hard lesson to learn, I think, because I'm a people pleaser and I want to make everybody happy, but it's true that not everyone is going to like your book. And sometimes if I get a bad review, I'll go look at the reviews from like, Jane Austen, and there are people who don't like Jane Austen. Every great author out there, there's somebody who doesn't like the book, and it's okay. But you have to kind of come to that. That's very true. So, but I wanted to circle back to, you mentioned earlier, you enjoy connecting with readers and bringing out emotions in the readers. Yeah. So, how do you do you have any tips for that? Like for somebody who's interested in like the craft of like pulling people in emotionally? Or how did you do it instinctively, or do you work on it like you revise?
So I'm not sure. I do, a lot of it comes pretty naturally to me. What I do is, so I found, this is me personally, I don't like plotting a book. I feel like it kind of traps the characters and it doesn't allow much room for them to grow naturally. And part of that is it traps them emotionally too. And sometimes when I write after I plot, the emotions kind of feel very stale and they don't feel natural. So I write the story as it comes to me, usually. So like pretty much no plotting. And that's how I like to read it too. So I put myself in the shoes of the reader as I'm writing it. So it's basically everything that's happening to my main character is happening to me in my mind. And I really try to bring out the emotions I would feel in that moment. Yeah.
So you're sort of experiencing it as you're, yes. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. And we've talked to a lot of people who are like plotters and a lot of people who write more organically. And I think it just depends on, which one appeals to you and makes you Like I would panic if I didn't have an outline, like I had a blank screen. I'd be like, so I have to have something. So,
I do think it depends on just how you write. That's just my personal experience with plotting and stuff.
Yeah. Well, what about marketing? What do you wish you'd known about marketing?
Yeah. So one thing I wish I knew before I started publishing about marketing is you don't have to do it all at one time. It's really hard to get trapped into the cycle of I have to spend tons of money on Facebook ads and I have to spend tons of money on Amazon ads and I should be on TikTok and I should be doing Instagram and newsletter. Yeah. And it's really, you feel like you have to do all of this stuff when really you can focus on one thing and just get really, really good at it. And then from there you can expand. And I think one of the big things about marketing is at least for me personally, I try to build a community around my stories instead of trying to get a bunch of readers just to read one of them. Okay. If that makes sense. Like, I rather have a community of readers who are like huge super fans and are in this like fandom of a specific story than people who will read just one of my books and then be done with them.
Right. So you're looking to cultivate a following or readers who enjoy all your books. That like they read one and they want to read more, right? Not just one and done and go on to somebody else. They want to read an Emilia Rose book, right?
Yes. That's what I try to do.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah. Well, what assumptions did you make at the beginning of your writing career? And looking back, did they turn out to be right or wrong?
I think going back to it, I actually, in the very beginning of my writing career, I never thought I would ever publish a book. I come from like a very low income background. And so like publishing and just like anything like creative wasn't really on the table for me to do. It was like, you have to go to college and you have to like get a job in like a STEM field or something like that. And so I just like never thought it was even possible. I didn't know how you would do it. And so that was a big assumption I would make, especially coming from like low income, is like, when I started, I was like, I can't do any of this. And as I grew and as I continue to learn about publishing, there's a lot of ways to publish a book and get your story out there. And there's not just one way of going through like a traditional publisher. You can go through subscriptions, or you can do Kickstarter, or you can do KU. It's really however you want to publish the book. Yeah.
And that's so important to like realize that you're not locked into one path.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it takes a while to figure that out.
Yeah, it does. It does
see
take
all
a
the
while.
different options. Yeah. Well, we always like to ask about lessons learned and, mistakes people have made. Have you ever made a mistake that turned out to be a good thing? Can you think of anything that would fall into that category?
There was this one mistake I made. This is more leaning towards subscriptions.
Okay.
And mistake within subscriptions is I schedule my chapters out ahead of time. So how I publish through subscriptions is I publish a set of chapters, like chapters 1 through 5, 1 week, and then the next week it will be 6 through 10 or something like that. And I also have different tiers. So my higher tiers get the chapters ahead of my lower tiers. And one thing I accidentally did was I shared a story that was on a higher tier with a lower tier, which I felt really bad because it's supposed to be exclusive to one of my higher tiers. And after I did that, everyone was like, they wanted the story, like the complete story in that lower tier as soon as possible. And some of them like even jumped up to my higher tiers.
I was going to say, I bet some of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt so bad because that's not what I meant to do. It was like a huge mistake, but it turned out to be a really cool thing, I guess, because like I learned that people are willing to pay more for my stories than what I was originally offering them. So that was like my big, like, oh, I need to like value my writing more, and I need to value these stories more because people are willing to pay more for them.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we tend as authors to view like a whole novel at like 99 cents or $2.99. And that's like the standard. Or some friends and I have had a big debate, like not debate, but like angst over, should we raise our price from $4.99 to $5.99? And then when you think about it in the big scope of things, like $6 isn't that much. So, but it's the mind frame. And if you can figure out that you do have readers who are interested in your work and they want to support you, and they're okay with paying maybe even $10, $20, $30, it's like a completely different way to look at things.
Yeah, it's definitely a shift, especially when you shift from like just publishing your stories at like $4.99, like a one-time payment, to like subscription based where people are paying you monthly. It's definitely a huge mindset shift that is very hard to make because, like you were saying, like a lot of creatives, I feel like society just tells creatives like your work isn't valuable, but like people can continue to consume art in different ways. But so many artists and authors just don't think their work is worth it when it really is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to talk about subscription and just the different possibilities there are with that, because there's a lot. So, but before we get to that, let's finish up. So we always like to ask like the kind of the opposite of the last question was, have you ever had something that you thought was just like a brilliant idea and then it turned out to be not so great?
Oh, probably a lot of stuff.
Yeah, me too.
I remember when I started subscriptions, a lot of these answers are subscription based because it's my main model.
Yeah.
But when I started, I was like, I have to offer, in order to get anyone to convert to my subscription, in order to get anyone onto them to become part of this community, I need to offer everything I have. Like I need to be publishing like 10 chapters a week, 20 chapters a week. And I was like, after a while, I needed to step back and be like, this is not doable. Like I can't do that. I was offering way too much for way too little. So I think it's just, for me in my author career, it's a lot of just reassessing things and figuring out what's working, what's not working, and not being afraid to drop the things that are not working for me.
Right. Yeah.
Which is really hard.
Yeah. And I think that is something with like doing a recurring model, income model, like subscription, you do feel like, oh, I've got to give everything. And it's exhausting. You can't keep it up, right? You have to kind of figure out what you're able to do and then what you can charge for that. And did it take you a while to figure that out? Like,
I'm still learning. So I'm still figuring out a little bit at a time. I'm actually, in a couple of weeks, I'll be scaling back even further and releasing less chapters on my subscription. So it does take a long time. And when you have more and more people joining your subscription, things tend to change. Like people might want certain books for you to write certain books, or they might want you to do more audiobooks. And it's just constantly just seeing what your community wants and kind of shifting from there. But yeah, to answer your question, it did take a while. It's still happening. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about subscription stuff a little bit more, because I think that's like, it's very interesting. There are authors doing it, but it's not mainstream, I don't think. So can you describe like how you do your subscription? Just kind of give us an overview of how you do that.
Yeah. So I release chapters every week. So as I was saying before, we'll make it a little bit simpler. On my subscription, I write and release like 3 chapters per week to my highest tier. And then I'll drip the chapters down. So the highest tier has 3 chapters, but the lowest tier might have only 1 chapter. And I'll continue to write the book in that sort of manner to the people that are currently in my subscription and currently in that community. But at the same time, I'm funneling more people into the community by releasing like 1 to 2 chapters per week, either free through my newsletter or free on free serial websites like Wattpad. And at the end of those chapters, I write a little author's note saying like, hey, you could read up to chapter like 20 if you join my subscription, or you can read the rest of the book if you join my subscription. And that's currently my funnel and how I use subscription.
So is it staggered, like you'd release the first chapters to your Patreon, and then like after some time goes by, do you put it on the free, put it out so many chapters for free later, or do you do it all at once?
So when I started, I was doing it all at once. So I would have like 3 chapters on my subscription and then 1 chapter on Wattpad or my newsletter. And every week I would add more chapters to Wattpad and add more chapters to my subscription at the same time. Now I've gotten to the point where I've built up so much of a like backlist, I guess, that I have the book finished on my subscription before I even start updating through my newsletter or on Wattpad.
Okay. So so there's quite a gap then sometimes between. Yeah. And then let's see, I thought of another question that I wanted to ask you about that. Do you leave the books up that you release for free? Do you leave those up, or do you change those out after a while, or how does that work?
So I leave them up on the free sites until I publish them on Amazon or on wide retailers. At that moment, I pull them down, and I usually just leave 5 chapters up as like a sample. And at the end, I'm like, hey, if you want to read this book, you could come over to my subscription, or you can buy it on Amazon.
Yeah. So. Okay, cool. All right. So, and then another question that comes up is it a lot of work? Like figuring out who gets what chapter and like sorting out it's almost like a lot of admin. Is there, it sounds to me like it'll be a lot of admin, but is there not once you kind of get used to it?
Once you get used to it, there's not a lot of admin, because it's basically like, at least for me, this is my rough draft that I'm writing for my subscription and for the free website. So it's basically I write a chapter and I post it, and then I post the next chapter that I need to post on Wattpad. It's not a lot of admin once you get used to it.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah. At first it could be kind of confusing, but
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's very, very interesting. And it's not something that I hear a lot of people doing. So if someone is interested and they wanted to do something like this, what are your recommendations for someone who wants to get started maybe with Patreon? Would you recommend Patreon? How would you recommend they get started?
Yeah, Patreon is a good website. You have to be careful, especially if you write anything kind of risque for Patreon, because they kind of get a little finicky. I had they shut my account down a couple of times because I was writing a steamy romance with some elements that they didn't like. But other than that, it's the most popular subscription platform right now. It has a lot of good tools, and it links into a lot of different apps where you can like host your community, like on Discord. You can post like videos or images if you want, if you have like a graphic novel that you're doing. But yeah, Patreon right now is the best place to do a subscription.
Okay. Yeah. And what about if someone wants to start this, like you mentioned, moving your readers to your subscription? Do you have any tips on how to do that? Other than like posting it online, letting people read a little bit, how do you draw them over?
Yeah. So honestly, that's my main tip. And that's how a lot of people came over to my subscription, is posting it for free. But if you don't want to post the whole thing for free, you can just have a sample out there. But just one of the big reasons why a lot of people join subscriptions is because they're reading the story and then it comes to this really, really great cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger, yes.
Yeah,
It's got to be a cliffhanger, right?
It's all about the cliffhangers. And then you stop the story and they're like, oh, I need to know what happens next. Like, you can't stop it there. And you're just like, oh, well, you could read the rest of my story if you come over.
Like, here it is.
So, yeah. So that's like a big thing in serial fiction is you have to have the cliffhangers.
Right. Okay. And that makes sense because we love story. And so we're going to want to know what happened no matter what it is. So yeah.
Yes.
Whatever, what genre it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about for someone who's already doing some form of subscription? Do you have like some advanced techniques or any tips for people who, kind of want to go to the next level?
Yeah. I would say definitely look at what other people are doing in subscription because you could, so kind of like backtracking a little bit, you have tiers in subscriptions usually. Right. And so you might want to continue offering your readers, like the majority of your readers, what they have now. But then you also might want to add some like tiers that are like a lot higher. For example, Kay Webster has a $150 tier and $200 tier. And it's insane. And those two tiers are maxed out. Like she has a limit on them and they're all filled up. And I think it's like, she has 20 people in her 150 and 10 in her 200. And it's just she's offering more and more exclusive stuff for them. And so they want to be in it and they don't want to leave because they're afraid if they leave, somebody's going to take that spot and they're not going to be able to. Yeah.
It's the scarcity. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't give this up. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say definitely, I'll look at what other authors are doing and what they're offering at what price points, because you don't want to undervalue yourself. I know like when I first started, you could get a free paperback book at my $10 tier, but I was like, after like a couple months, I was like, oh, this is kind of getting expensive for me.
Right. And it's
a lot
work
to ship it.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work too. So I guess like to get to that next level, just I would personally, and this is what I'm doing now, just see what other people are doing and kind of take that and see how it fits in your business.
Yeah. Yeah. On the higher tiers, I'm working on a Kickstarter. So I've been studying different book related Kickstarters, and it is amazing the price tiers that are out there for 100, 200, 300. I mean, there's like some big price tiers that maybe authors think it's not possible. My readers would never pay that, but you don't know. And you might as well try it and see,
Yeah.
So
there's no harm in trying it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but if you're just starting out, would you recommend like only a certain number of tiers, like start with 3 or 5 or something like that? Or is it better to have a lot?
I would recommend 3, just because it's going to be more manageable for you. If you have any more than 3, it might get too hectic because you have to deliver things, different rewards to different tiers, and it's just going to be too much, especially if you're just starting, unless this is how you're starting your business. But also like on the reader end, the reader has to go, if you have like 10 tiers, the reader has to go through all of them and try to figure out which one they want to join. And it just could be too much. And they decide like, hey, I don't want to join any of them. It's too complicated.
Yeah. If you make it too hard, they'll just walk away, right?
Exactly. So just keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good advice, I think, with lots of things, because I tend to overcomplicate things anyway. So, and then for price points, you would just recommend like seeing what other authors are doing, maybe in your genre in particular?
Yeah. I would say a lot of people are leaning towards starting their lowest tier at $5. My lowest tier was $3 for a long, long time. But I recently changed it to $5 because that's becoming the standard as the lowest tier. But I would again look at what people in your genre are doing and see and see what you want to price your tiers, especially because you can have as many tiers as you want. And if you want to have only 3 tiers, those prices are going to be different from what you're offering.
Right. Yeah. Well, and have you, like, when you change things up, do you get any pushback? Like, if you decide, like you said, you were doing a paperback and then you decided not to do that, or you changed your lowest tier price, have people been upset, or do they not care?
So I look at people in subscriptions, like, these are like your biggest fans. And you're like your super fans if they're willing to pay monthly for your stuff.
Right.
And so usually you just have to be open and honest with them. If you can't commit to doing as many chapters as you said you're going to do, just let them know. And some people are going to get mad and be like, I'm leaving. But other people are going to be like, okay, like, we want her to continue writing. We understand, like, this is becoming too much. And if it could overload her, doing less is fine. Or like offering a paperback book or taking that away. Usually it's fine because people understand shipping costs a lot too. If you're offering a paperback book at $10, like, that's kind of not super reasonable, especially if it's signed. But for the changing the price of my lowest tier, what I did, and what I feel like a lot of people don't know that you could do this, is you just unpublish the tier. So that means everybody who's in that tier stays in that tier. They continue paying the $3 or whatever your lowest tier is. And they continue paying that much until they upgrade or until they leave. But anyone new who's coming in only sees your new lowest tier. So they only see that $5 instead of the $3 tier to join.
Okay. So that's a good way to handle it. So
you're not getting anyone mad.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, what are some of your most popular rewards? Or what have you seen that readers really love?
My readers personally just love more chapters. Unfortunately. But I have, for a while, I had an exclusive book at my highest tier, and there was a lot of people who were joining just to read that book. But I've also been adding artwork and some audio. Audio is not super popular with my readers, so I haven't been expanding that as much. But paperback books are definitely a plus. Character art. I'm also working on a graphic novel, and I have it in a specific tier right now. And there's a lot of people who jumped over to it just to see the steamy artwork in it. So
nice. Well, that is cool. That's very interesting things that, like, it would be hard to do that on a retailer, but you can do it on Patreon. So that's nice. Yeah. So, and I guess I should have asked you, so, like, if we backed up, I think subscription is awesome because you have the recurring income. So what would you say to somebody who's kind of reluctant but maybe interested? Would you definitely recommend subscription as a way to, like, diversify the income in your business?
I personally would, just because that's how I started. And I really believe that it is recurring income, and it's more stable than other income that you might have, like KU reads, or just like people buying stuff on Amazon. It's very variable. It depends a lot on other people as well. And it depends on how well your Facebook ads do. If you really curate this community of your biggest fans and they're paying you monthly for your writing, like, that's probably like the most stable income you're going to receive.
Right.
Because it's not like they're buying a paperback book or an ebook one time. It's they're consistently supporting you, and they're like, they want you to succeed. So they're going to do anything they can do to, like, help you get there. If that's, like, reviewing your book on a certain platform, or if that's like spreading the word to their friends about your books, even if it's not about your subscription. These people like really, really want you to succeed.
Yeah. And
so
they want to
I
help
would
you.
say, yeah. So I would say definitely do it.
Yeah. And I heard you speak at InkersCon, and one thing you said at InkersCon was that you have people who will sign up for your subscription and they get the drafts, and then later they'll go and buy the book, right?
Yes.
And then, so it's not like, oh, I've already read that. They are real true fans, and they want more of what you have, even if it's just like, oh, this is the newer version, So it's just a way to develop a very close relationship with your readers, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. I have a lot of people who I even give my readers on my subscription the final book, like the final ebook after it's been edited. I will provide them like a download link, and then people are like, "Oh, we don't need the download link. We already pre-ordered it." And I was like, "Okay, thank you."
That's great. Yeah,
it's really cool. And a lot of people will buy the paperbacks and hardbacks too. I'll like always get pictures. I have like this one fan, she like loves sending me like pictures of her bookshelf every time new books come in, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that is great. That is what we all want, right?
Yeah.
As authors, we want the readers who are very excited about our books. So, well, this has been cool, and it's just, I love it shows that you don't have to do things. You don't have to use the retailers as your primary source of income. You can, diversify out of that. But you're also working on a project for a subscription service just for authors, fiction authors, right?
Yes,
yeah,
we are.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know it's not out yet.
I'm working with a really close friend, Michael Evans, and my husband. His name is Sean. And we're building Ream, which is basically Patreon, but for fiction authors. There's going to be like an e-reader. So so Patreon right now doesn't have an e-reader. You just have to like upload all the chapters separately. So it's going to be a lot more optimized for fiction. We're going to have like inline commenting. So if people are reading your story, they can connect with other readers, and you can basically see the feedback real time if you want it. There's also going to be a scheduler in it where you could just schedule the book to release on chapters on certain dates, and there's no like scheduling individual chapters.
Nice.
And we plan on expanding as soon as possible, pretty much. We can only do so much because it's just my husband working on like developing the actual website and the app. But we're hoping to have it out sometime by the end of the year, hopefully.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I love things that are built by authors for authors, because you have a really good idea of what we need and how to make it work specifically for our little part of the market. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that'll be great.
I'm super excited for it. And that was like one of the main things when I was helping like design the website is we're always thinking about authors because me and Michael are authors, and my husband is really into storytelling as well. So we're just trying to make it as optimized as possible for authors. And one of the big things is we don't want to censor people as much as like other people are, like Amazon censoring or Patreon censoring, just because we're writing fiction, like the app is for fiction. So
yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. You'll have to let us know when it comes out.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so that'd be good. Well, we'd like to ask everybody this question about success. Like, what do you think has been the best thing you've done to set yourself up for success?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the best thing I've done is try to actually really connect with everybody who's reading my book. And that's just like, it's really hard to do that when people are buying your book on retailers because there's no place to connect, really. Right. You have to like try to get them into your Facebook group at the end of, or onto your email list. But one of the big things is just replying to like emails or replying to comments I get on social media. really trying to make the readers feel like, because I am doing it, like feel like I'm there with them and feel like I'm seeing all of their stuff because I am. And just, connecting like on a personal level. It's definitely what's helped me. Yeah,
that's great. Well, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, you could find more about me on my website. It's emiliarosewriting.com. And we also have a subscription group on Facebook where we talk about subscriptions. It's Subscriptions for Authors Facebook group.
Okay, great. Well, we'll have all those links in the show notes, and you can find those at wishidknownthenpodcast.com. And thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast, and to Adriel Wiggins for doing the admin. And we will see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.